I now give the floor to His Excellency Wilfred Elrington, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Belize.
Madam President, heads of state and delegations, distinguished ministers, excellencies. At the outset, I wish to express the sympathies of the government and people of Belize with the government and people of Indonesia in view of the devastating earthquake and tsunami which killed over 400 persons. Also, I express Belize's solidarity with Barbados and St. Lucia, fellow CARICOM countries, which are recovering from Tropical Storm Kirk, and also with other countries of the Eastern Caribbean, which are affected by an earthquake, all within the last few days. Madam President, this year marks the 37th anniversary of Belize's independence. Belizeans have now enjoyed almost 4 uninterrupted decades of freedom, peace, and democracy in our sovereign, independent nation. During that period, our leaders succeeded in making modest gains in our nation's quest for sustainable development. They did so notwithstanding the fact that our country has been the subject of a live territorial claim, a poisoned colonial chalice which predates our grant of independence by approximately 1/2 century. Because of that claim, our nation's birth was protracted and fraught with difficulty. All Belizeans who are seized of the history of our journey to independence greatly credit the United Nations for it, and rightly so. It was Resolution 1514 of this General Assembly, passed on the 14th December 1960, which paved the way for all colonial peoples to be able to transition to independence. Belize is a beneficiary of that seminal resolution and of subsequent UN resolutions passed between 1971 to 1980, which mandated the British to grant it early independence. On 21st September 1981, Belize achieved its independence, and as soon as it had done so, the United Nations welcomed our fledgling democratic state as its newest member, affirming its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. Yet, 37 years later, the Guatemalan claim still remains unresolved. Indeed, the efforts to have the claim resolved at the International Court of Justice eluded the British government for upward of 80 years. Thankfully, however, Belizeans will soon decide whether the present opportunity to bring to a definitive settlement this claim, which has long sown fear in the hearts of all Belizeans and which have long hamstrung our nation's development potential, will in fact be seized. The significance of the April 15, 2017 Guatemalan referendum, which ratified the decision of their government in 2008 to cause the claim to my country to be adjudicated upon by the ICJ, should not be lost. For, in carrying out the referendum, Guatemala gave effect to their obligation under the special agreement that both our countries had signed in good faith. At the same time, there is still one pending issue for us to agree upon. In continuing that spirit of good faith, we urge our neighbor Guatemala to agree on a procedure or protocol for confidence-building measures on the Sassoon River, our southern boundary with Guatemala, to facilitate the management of incidents of the kind that gave rise to heightened tensions between our two countries in 2015 and 2016. Madam President, Belizeans are now on the cusp of a truly rare and felicitous moment in our nation's history. Our voting public, in the finest democratic fashion, is now seized of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to determine the fate of our country. The government of Belize has appointed April 10, 2019 as the date for the national referendum. On that day, all registered Belizeans will be entitled to cast their ballots, signaling either their consent or rejection to having the Guatemalan claim resolved once and for all by the ICJ. In preparation for that historic plebiscite, our government has embarked upon a nationwide public awareness campaign to ensure that all Belizeans are fully informed about the nature of the claim and why it should be referred to the ICJ for a resolution. Simultaneously, with efforts to end the Guatemalan claim and thereby enhance our national security, our government continues to discharge its core duty to promote economic development, job creation, education, and health care to our citizens. To that end, we are striving mightily to implement our growth and sustainable development strategy, which is fully aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. In this endeavor, the UN Development System is partnering with us through the Multi-Country Sustainable Development Framework. We are also working assiduously to address the scourge of poverty, which persistently afflicts our country and our citizenry. Current statistics reveal that some 43% of Belizeans live below the poverty line, with 16% experiencing extreme poverty. The interventions to treat with this problem include 3 new programs, which specifically target indigent families. In addition to furnishing beneficiaries with financial benefits, direct economic, social, and psychological support are also provided, as well as job readiness courses to prepare beneficiaries for gainful employment. And under a food pantry program, basic food baskets are provided at subsidized rates to poor families as well. Madam President, an alarming knowledge gap is rapidly widening between the few fortunate Belizeans who are well-educated, skilled, and poised to succeed in a fiercely competitive, knowledge-based 21st century environment, and the many who are being left behind without the skills and wherewithal to obtain employment or to create their own, or even to engage legitimately and meaningfully in civic life. It is indispensable to Belize's development, prosperity, security, and democracy that we urgently seek to close this knowledge gap and ensure that all our youth are equipped to successfully face the myriad challenges of the 21st century. To that end, and with a view to increasing access to education, government is building 35 new schools. Consequent upon the initiation of a high school subsidy grant, there is now a discernible improvement in rates of transition from primary to secondary school for students identified as having academic or socioeconomic challenges. All students in the districts and rural areas of the country with the highest incidence of poverty automatically qualify for that subsidy. And this year, government is expanding the reach of the subsidy with the intention of minimizing the disparity in enrollment and achievement between students coming from rural areas and those hailing from urban ones. In addition, government is taking new measures to assist youth at risk from coming into conflict with our laws. We have recently launched the Belize Youth Challenge program. This program concentrates on teaching youth discipline, personal administration and teamwork, and skills in technical and vocational areas. It also encourages them to become responsible, patriotic, and productive citizens. With a view to enhancing the delivery of health services, government has initiated steps for the construction of a modern hospital in the Toledo district. Madam President, 2019 will mark 25 years of support of the United Nations for the SIDS agenda. Belize joins in the call for a renewed commitment to the special case of SIDS and for systematically targeted support to respond to the particular needs of SIDS, such as those identified by the Caribbean SIDS in the San Pedro Declaration adopted in Belize last August. The destructive hurricanes and storms which ravage the Caribbean year on year are a constant reminder of the true scale of vulnerability facing SIDS in the Caribbean. It is hoped that through the implementation of his reform plan, the Secretary General will explore ways in which the United Nations Development System can better accelerate the implementation of the SIDS agenda. Madam President, our government has made resilience building an integral part of its development planning and is implementing its National Climate Resilience Investment Plan to ensure that climate change-related impacts are integrated into national investment planning across all sectors and ministries. Government has also enacted mangrove regulations and instituted an indefinite moratorium on offshore drilling. This marks the first time that the developing country has taken such a major step to protect its marine resources from oil exploration and extraction. Belize is also banning single-use plastics and styrofoam by April 2019. I'm happy to share that the World Heritage Committee of UNESCO recently decided to remove the Belize Barrier Reef, the largest in the Western Hemisphere, from the list of World Heritage in danger, after taking into account several measures that our government implemented to ensure its protection and well-being. Madam President, by dint of geography, Belize is located along the path frequented by criminal elements of every ilk as they journey from south to north to traffic their illicit wares. This had had tragic consequences for the peace and safety of Belizeans. It has conduced to a dramatic increase in our homicide rates over the last decade, with each year being deadlier than the previous. Tackling transnational organized crime in Central America requires a truly cooperative and collaborative approach, along with multilateral support. Thankfully, UNICEF, UNDP, and UNODC have been important and faithful collaborators with government in implementing programs to address underlying social causes, as well as building capacity of protective and judicial institutions. Madam President, from the foregoing, it is pellucid that the United Nations is of inestimable value and importance to Belize. Belize, like other members of the United Nations, is not unaware of its limitations. But it is not without some measure of anxiety that we note the fact that some of its core values are under sustained attack, while organs that have been painstakingly erected to reinforce the rule of law are being derided and international legal frameworks are being cast aside in unilateral acts of political expediency. Paradoxically, however, the criticisms and attacks are being unleashed at a time when the world is most in need of a robust United Nations, as nations large and small are being buffeted by catastrophic occurrences, both natural and man-made, at a pace never before witnessed by humanity. Thus, while we appreciate the need for reform of the United Nations institutions, we are equally mindful of its unique and invaluable role in a world that is becoming increasingly more perilous. Belize fears that if we stand in silence or fail to speak out in its defense and in defense of multilateralism, we risk repeating the tragedies of the past, and we forsake the very values that the United Nations stand for. Indeed, we forsake our very responsibility to humanity. History will measure us by our actions, not by our words. Madam President, Belize is supportive of all initiatives to put an end to languishing conflicts across the globe which conduce to senseless death, destruction, and suffering. We echo the cry of the Palestinians for an independent state within its 1967 borders and with all attendant rights. We pray that the ICJ will bring a speedy end to Venezuela's claim over Guyana's territory. Belize remains firm and unwavering in its support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Guyana. We pray as well that the civil strife in Venezuela will soon be ended. Belize joins the call for an end to the unilateral economic, commercial, and financial embargo against Cuba and its people, which is in violation of international law and serves no just purpose. The blockade has failed to pressure the government into submission. Indeed, it has had the opposite effect. Leveraging its inexhaustible reserves of patriotism and creativity, Cuba has been able to survive and thrive to a degree that has garnered international recognition for its resilience, its selfless generosity, and for its signal gains in public health, education, and the arts. Surely it is high time, after nearly 58 years, to lift the blockade so that Cuba can reach the highest levels of its extraordinary potential. In a similar spirit of determination, Belize reiterates its plea on behalf of the 23 million people of Taiwan for a new approach to the participation of Taiwan in the United Nations system. Taiwan is the 22nd largest economy of the world. It is a vibrant democracy that has fully embraced international norms and standards. Yet, despite global recognition of their successes, and despite the readiness of UN member states to conduct business with this fast-growing economy, this institution has cut them off. It has gone so far as to refuse to recognize the legitimacy of Taiwanese passports, and so literally cutting off even the Taiwanese tourists from entering its premises as visitors. It uses General Assembly Resolution 2758 of 1971 effectively as a political and humanitarian embargo against Taiwan. No such embargo, indeed, has any place in this United Nations in the view of Belize. Madam President, the success of the United Nations have never been won by focusing on what divides us. Had we done so, we would not have achieved a landmark human rights declaration, a transformative development agenda, or a constitution for the oceans and seas, and we certainly would not have a framework agreement for collective action on climate change. Focusing on what unites us can bring us further along to address the gaps in the law of the sea to guarantee that equitability persists even in areas beyond national jurisdiction. In the same manner, we can in Poland take the final decisions to give full effect to the Paris Agreement and mobilize momentum for the level of ambition and the magnitude of support needed to avoid irreversible adverse impacts of climate change. Belize is ready to commit to raising our ambition and urge others to join us in 2020 to set the world on the right path to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. Madam President, in conclusion, Belize has weathered many trials in our humble defense of what rightly belongs to us. We see our struggle reflected in those of many others who have been denied the full enjoyment of their rights and the full achievement of their potential. We are, however, fortified in the belief that right will triumph, that in the end, our shared values of justice and our belief in human dignity will bring us ever so closer to the resolutions the world needs. So we march on in service of the United Nations and all the world's people, armed with our values and the enduring hope for peace and security. Madam President, I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Wilfred Elrington, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Belize, for his statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Osman Mohamed Saleh,